Hi there, my name's Daniel Sutherland and I'm one of the academic leads at Grays School of Art, and I also lecture on the 3D design programme in the school. 3D design encompasses product design, contemporary craft, jewellery design, ceramics and glass. It's quite a broad multidisciplinary course and our students eventually specialise in one of their chosen areas. We're really excited to be a part of the CR City project. The opportunity to connect with so many schools on an international level is fantastic, and we're really excited by that. Today I'm going to be looking at the design process and indeed design thinking, just to begin to kind of identify the fact that there are very, very useful tools to help you through your creative practice out there. And in this short lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about design process and thinking. So we're going to look at, what is design process? What is design thinking? Why would you want to go and have a look at these things? Why do we care about these things at all? Are they helpful? Are they useful? How does a design process help us to design? Why have one in the first place? What tools can we use to help us think our way through the creative process? So let's get stuck in. Why use a design process? Well, design process is something that designers have been talking about for decades. And if you go and do a bit of Googling about design theory, there are other words in here like user-centered, design methods, design philosophy, research, design studies, design principles, all these different things. These keywords will take you to areas of thinking and thought around design, which will indicate some of the ideas that designers have or creatives have about the design process and why it's so important. And it's really important to say that lots and lots of different creatives, architects, designers, artists, they all use a creative process of some kind. And indeed, a great deal of the time, it's a process that is honed out of many, many years of creative experience. But it's very important to know what a process is and how you use that to track where you are within a particular project. That's the most important thing about a design process, is that it helps you to discuss and describe and to really map out what kind of progress you're making in a certain area. So surely a design process is simply like 1, 2, 3. You start, you have a problem, or you have a challenge, a creative challenge of some kind. You come up with some ideas in point 2, and then you prototype them, you make something, you output something, you resolve something in point 3. And yes, naturally, there's a natural instinct to move through a process in this way, but a great deal of the time, what actually happens is a bit of this. And you end up going back and forth, finding out more information, and then going back to a different point. And it's very easy to become quite tangled in the creative process. And the reason why we have design models or design processes is to help us track this. And there are lots of them out there. There are simple flow diagrams where people try to indicate whether or not they're empathizing with a particular group or a particular problem, how they're defining that design challenge, ideating new ideas, possible solutions, prototyping those things and testing them. But this again is still really quite linear. Other ways some creatives use are things like families of ideas or structuring clusters of ideas by theme, where they'll identify a particular creative challenge, they'll look at the ways that they can deal with that, and then they'll begin to be selective and they'll kind of cluster ideas into themes and progress their way through these ideas as they go. And in this particular map, creatives are kind of generating information and then they're being selective about information. And they're generating information and they're being selective about information. And through that iterative process, they're working through their ideas to try and understand the progress that they're making and where there's opportunities for innovation and iteration. But again, the creative process is a broad one. It is an unknown in the sense that you don't know what you're about to tackle when you do it. And regardless of what the structure is that you think you're mapping onto, there is an element of chaos within that creativity. And that's why it's really important to try and have some kind of a map to know where you are. So here in the UK, the Design Council, they kind of officially back this particular model, which we call a double diamond. Lots of you may have heard this before. It's a very broadly used model to describe the design process. And really, it's about beginning to discover a problem, trying to find out whether or not what the client has said is the problem is actually the problem, or what you think the creative challenge is actually the creative challenge, discovering the information around that, and then beginning to define what the parameters are for solving that particular creative challenge, making definitions for how you will run your project, planning your project in terms of how you're going to meet the creative challenges that you've identified or that you've discovered through your initial phase. And that left-hand quadrant is very much about that discovery and definition period within a creative brief. It's all about understanding what it is you're trying to achieve. And the right-hand quadrant is very much about developing ideas, testing out these ideas, and delivering a really great solution for your client or for your creative challenge, whichever stakeholder you might be working with or working for. And again, just like all the rest, there is no A plus B equals C or follow the dots and get to the end and have a great solution. This is an open, creative trajectory where you will move into one kind of quadrant and then find out that actually, you know what, you need more information, and you go back a step and you gather more information and you discover more, and then you come back to this defining area and you make better judgments, more calculated judgments based on the information that you've got. But being able to say, well, do you know what, I don't think I know enough information yet. I'm going to go back a step to the discover phase, or I'm going to go back and gather more information, just allows you to communicate to yourself and to everybody else where you are in this trajectory. And it's a really important step. So in these quadrants, things like research, context mapping, managing information, market research, just understanding your creative challenge. In the define phase, you're filtering, you're identifying and clarifying, you're making sense of the brief, you're understanding and you're scoping out what the challenge is and how you are going to deal with it. In the development phase, you're really looking at developing those concepts that you identified as being potential direction within your define phase. This is the problem in our discover phase, defining how you might approach that in your define phase, and then beginning to develop ideas. And again, you're broadly thinking about information and develop, and you're beginning to select and define solutions in your delivering phase. And a lot of the time, this is called divergent and convergent thinking. But in general, excuse me, the creative process is about generating and it's about selecting. So in any one of these diamonds, you are going through a period of generating information. You're discovering the brief, and then you're selecting information. You are defining what the parameters are of that. And then the second part, you're developing ideas. You're being divergent, and you're generating ideas. And then at the end, you are being selective, and you're creating solutions and delivering on the brief. So what about design thinking? Within that mapping process, within that kind of model, how do we help ourselves in terms of understanding types of information and using tools to help us make better judgments? Well, design thinking is an approach to design. It's a methodology. It's a way of thinking where you apply tools and systems to identify the factors within a given need or problem. And you use those factors as a basis for the development of solutions. And a great deal of the time, this is linked to user-centered design or human-centered design. But more often than not, what you are doing is you're placing the user at the center of the creative challenge, and how you're identifying the needs within that, and how you're tackling those things to create solutions. And it's about user, it's about experience. And Google those things, go out, have a look at what design thinking tools are linked to those particular things, because there's a lot out there. And in the last 20 years or so, 25 years, this has been greatly popularized by the guys working at IDEO. And you would want to go and have a look at There's some books out there I would probably recommend. Change by Design, Tim Brown's fantastic book on design thinking. And it's not all about, here's a tool, use this to get this result. It's about how does thinking in a particular way benefit the approach to redefining a problem, reimagining a particular way of doing something. And design thinking has been picked up by massive, companies over the course of the last 20, 30 years, and is really employed not just by designers, because it's a very powerful way of structuring your approach to gathering information and then defining what the needs are and creating innovative solutions based on the new knowledge that you have. And some examples of tools that are out there are things like journey maps, empathy maps, personas, idea generation methods, prototypes. Prototypes are not always physical objects. Sometimes they can be storyboards. Sometimes they can be a map of an experience that someone might have within a space or a place. And very quickly you can ideate and prototype a potential solution to something through a storyboard. It doesn't need to be a physical object. And there are lots out there, and I would encourage you to go and have a look and do a little bit of discovery around what personas are. How does understanding the nature of a particular user in a space or a place help you? What does it tell you about their experience on how you might innovate or improve on that? How does mapping out the successes or the challenges or the good experiences and the bad experiences within any particular journey that a user might have as they occupy a space, as they move through a space, as they use a space, as they interact with objects within a space? How does that help you as a designer? What do you generate in terms of knowledge as a result of that, and how do you use that to be innovative and to create a meaningful, positive result for the user? And I would also encourage you to go and have a look at ideation tools. Idea generation, it's a kind of it should be a fun sport, as it were. It should be something that you do and you have fun with, and there are lots of models out there about how to ideate, how to generate ideas quickly, effectively, under time constraints, with others, on your own, based on themes, with particular parameters, etc., etc. There's lots out there, and I'd really encourage you to have a look at that and try some of those techniques out when you're responding to the information that you've gathered. So that's just a very brief overview of why you would have a design process in the first place, the fact that there are lots out there, the fact that you can really hone your own approach to using any one of these models. No one is perfect. No one model is, the absolute perfect solution. But it helps you to track where you are and how you're moving. Design thinking tools, there are lots out there, and I would really encourage you to go and explore that as much as you can, to use those tools to help you make better, more informed judgments. Thank you very much. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to email me at the address on the bottom. Thank you.